Hi guys, HeliGriff here. Take you on a quick build tour of the Trex 700 Pro DFC HV. Yeah, this model has the high voltage servos like the 800 does, so that you don't need a voltage step down regulator. And as you can see, I did it in classic HeliGriff colors, with the two batteries that run my servos and my radio and receiver and flybar system. It's a dual battery setup, so it's a battery backup in case one fails. We always have another one. They are both jacked into the flybarless system, as you can see on these two black leads here. Now, unlike my other builds where I make every wire up there going into the flybarless the same, I was not able to do that on this particular build because of the fact that there's just not enough room. So let me kind of explain that a little bit. When I ordered the helicopter, I thought this will be a piece of cake. It's a 700, it's a giant helicopter, so it'll be a piece of cake to wire. I just wired my Trekker, no problems. I wired my 600, no problems. I thought this one would be the same way. I got to tell you, this was the most difficult helicopter I've ever wired. And Align made it easy for me by designing the thing to wire from the front. In other words, your battery leads should come out to the front. ESC sits up here. Wires come down, plug right into the front of the battery. It should have been a piece of cake. They even give you an outlet right here for the battery wires. If you can't come from underneath, you can come through the side, and they even built in a space there for that. But you know me, I like to have an off and on switch so that I don't have to mess around with the canopy out on the airstrip when it's my turn to fly. All I want to do is flip a switch and say go and take off flying. So I'll spin this around. There's my switch, A-B switch. The other thing that I like to do is run my battery connections to the back of the bird. That way, again, you can put on the canopy when you put your fresh main packs in. You can leave it sit. You don't have to mess around with the battery or with the canopy. If it's 30 minutes before you get to fly again, when it's your turn, you just grab the bird, take it out, flip the switch on, plug in your main bats, and you're off and running. So, what was the difficulty about wiring this bird? Well, the frame is extra long, and I'll throw some pictures up as I talk about this. The frame's about a ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch longer than the Trekker frame. However, it is a good 3/4 of an inch shorter in height. Now you say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that 3/4 of an inch is where I ran all my wires through, which was right down in here, this area, on the Trekker, and on my 600. I was able to get the main battery leads ran back here to the back. The 700 does not have any room between the tray slide and the bottom bearing block. You can see the bottom bearing block because it is a 1, 2, 3 block system in this bird. There's no space in there for wires, so I had to go up here on top, and that's a little challenging because you've got two large main bat leads. Of course, you've got your rudder. In my case, I had my GPS. You've got an aileron servo, elevator servo on the other side, and pitch over there. So everything's coming forward, and you got to skinny it in there. Now, as you can see, there's wires on this side of the main gear, right? And you can see there's wires on this side of the main gear. So the question is, HeliGriff, what if you have to take this gear out? Well, that presented a special problem. I didn't want to have to undo wiring to get that off of there. So here's what I did. I have one zip tie right there. I clip that zip tie, then I undo all the screws in the frame, and this whole frame comes off. Okay? I'm going to show you a photo in just a minute, but what I did was I fastened all the wires to the cross members, and I put in extra. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 extra hex bolts in here, and those hex bolts are what holds the wires. And I did not use zip ties on them. I used shrink wrap tubing. Because that way they're like little rubber bands. I can slip them off, slip them back on. So what happens? I strip a gear, I pull one face off one side of the frame, I slip the wires off the hex bolts, I replace the gear, slide the wires back on the hex bolt, put the face back on, I'm ready to go again. Case in point is, it really does work. I got the Heli to this stage and realized I had forgot to chuck this umbrella gear down in here. And sure enough, it wasn't seated all the way into the bearings. So I had to pull this out. Now you might say, well, wasn't that tough? Because right there is your, right there is the wire going to your receiver, and here's the wire going to your GPS. No, I simply unplugged that one, unplugged my receiver, which, by the way, the satellite receiver is back there. You see the little green antenna. I simply unplugged those, took the screws out for the tail boom mount, and this whole baby just pops right out. Not a problem. You want to be able to remove everything on a helicopter without having to undo 15 other things, okay? One of the noticeable things you'll see about this particular helicopter, and I wish I could say that I came up with the idea, but I didn't. The ESC is mounted between the motor and the nose cone. Well, Colin Bell, who is a professional pilot, made the mention on one of his videos that he likes to put the ESC there on a 700 because it frees up the requirement of running wires on the outside of the frame. He doesn't like to run outside the frame either. And he said by putting the ESC here, you could better hide the wires. Well, that's true, except Colin wires all his batteries up here. So, it was a challenge. I put it here to keep the wires concealed, but I'm going back here for my battery connection. So that was a little tough. And as we go through the photos, you'll see that. Okay? Now, as far as everything else, I got to tell you on the build, be careful what order you go in. For example, I must have had these servos in and out about 5 times because I realized I'd need to get to a screw, and I had already put those in, and of course you end up having to pull the servo out to get to something else to tighten it up. It was a challenge, especially with my filler plates. Let me show you the filler plates. If I can turn this big thing around. Here's a filler plate, okay? Took some carbon fiber sheeting that I bought from Hobby King, and I cut little pieces of it. I'll show you the photo here. And so what it does is it hides that big gaping hole. The problem is when you're setting up your rudder, servo and the gears, the cogs on the gear, the plate's in the way. So what I did is I used Phillips screws. So when I needed to adjust that rudder servo gear and get it centered, I can just pop out these 4 screws, remove the plate, do my adjustment, put the links on, put the 4 screws back in, I'm ready to go again. Up here, I had a blast on this one. I took another carbon fiber sheet to fill this hole in, but it's mounted on the back side, which gave me a nice little hideaway place for my satellite receiver. My DMSX. So, worked out great. However, when you close these holes up, that means you can't get to important screws like the ones that go in here. So that's kind of a challenge. So think about that as you're building it. If you're going to use filler panels, kind of plan out when you're going to put them in and make sure that you can always get to other screws. Here's a nice little feature. I never run a line stock linkage because they're right-hand thread on both ends. Instead, I buy titanium, I buy turnbuckles. This particular set is titanium. I thought I'd try these. I've used Lunford, and these are Heli option, I believe. When I put the head together, the first thing I do is get the aligned dampers out of here, the black ones, toss them aside, put in some nice Lynx dampers. You'll get flight after flight after flight after flight out of them, and with these big 700 blades, you don't have to worry about blowing through a set of dampers in a hurry. Not good luck with the lines dampers. Another thing you'll see is, unlike HeliGriff, I do braid all of my servo wires, but I usually coat them in the nice wrap like I did here. Up in here, again, you'll see I didn't. I just put shrink tubing on them, shrunk them. And the reason I did that, again, is because I had very little space coming up through here. And you'll see the photos on how I spaced that ESC out and got it away from there. Some people say, well, how do you keep the wiring so clean? Well, one of the things I do is, you see the blade holder back here? When you pop out the inserts for that blade holder, they make great spacers. And I take those foam pieces and I mount them, I hot glue them behind these batteries. What that does, it sets the batteries out closer to you, and then you can run all your wires behind here all the way to wherever they have to go, and it hides all the wires. Just makes a really nice clean install. You don't see a bunch of wires around. Okay, I'm not going to patent it, but are those awesome antenna holders or what? Okay, I make those out of T-pins. Yep, just plain old T-pins like you'd buy in a store. I just cut them down, put some shrink tubing on them, make them look pretty, and they hold my antennas where they have to go. Now, again, if you're running Spectrum equipment, which a lot of people are, has 2 antennas. One must point out 90 degrees, as this one does. The second antenna must be relatively on the same plane, but 90 degrees to this one. Don't forget that. Then your satellite, now we'll call these horizontal, okay? Your satellite must run completely 90 degrees to those. So your satellite antennas you want up and down. And if one of them can be in the clear, the other one's obstructed, but if one of them can be in the clear, always make it the left antenna. As you're looking at the front of the satellite, the left antenna needs to absolutely have access to the signal. and keep them on different planes. Okay, so it turned out to be a nice clean install based on the fact that I shoved the ESC down into that area there. Now you say, wow, how tough is that to get out of there? Well, it's a piece of cake. And the reason I know this is because after I got it in there, I had to take it out twice. So there's a screw here, screw there, 2 on the other side. You undo those 4, the whole nose goes pop right off. Of course, I've got my little EC2 connectors. Aren't they cute? Little baby connectors. Love them. Separate those. The nose cone comes off. The ESC is attached to the nose cone, and you simply undo 4 little bolts and out comes the ESC. It's not real tough at all. Okay, people say, HeliGriff, what is with the hex bolts covered in shrink wrap? Well, hey, it's my thing. I like it, so. Alright. Interspersed some pictures in here. I hope you enjoyed it. Go to my blog, rcgroups/HeliGriff. You can also check out my link there to SkyDrive, which has the entire build on it. And I'm sure this helicopter is going to make the owner very happy. Alright? Thanks for watching. HeliGriff out.